On today's video, I almost flipped my tractor figuring out how much it'll lift just for you guys. Stay tuned. What's going on, everyone? Jack here at the Mindful Homestead, and it is hot outside today. So it's already fairly late in the afternoon. It's 4 o'clock. Really, today, we've just been lounging about the house. Jackie ran a few errands that she had to do this morning. It's been way too hot for us New Englanders. And I do want to specify too hot for New Englanders, because I know I'm going to get a lot of feedback from folks like Chris down at Rockin' 8 Farm in Texas and Jason at Cog Hill Farm down south. You know, anybody down south, 90 degrees is not too hot for you. But up here in New Hampshire, 90 degrees is hot. We have a gravel driveway here, and if you've never had a gravel driveway before, over time, rocks tend to work their way up through the gravel and pop out the top. And I'm not just talking little rocks like the gravel that you're gonna have in the driveway, but big rocks. Any moisture that's in the ground underneath those boulders is gonna freeze in the wintertime and push those rocks up a little bit. And it doesn't really do a whole lot year to year, but over time, you know, if you amalgamate the 30 plus years that this driveway's been in place, rocks get pushed up pretty far. So you need to have those rocks dug out of the driveway so your car can come up and down the driveway. So what tends to happen in New England is as you dig up a rock, you just toss it off to the side. You'll see a lot of stone walls along New England roads, and yes, they were put there to border properties, but they were also put there because when they were digging those roads, they had to take boulders out and they needed some place to put them, and a rock wall on the side of the road is a perfect place to do it. Those rocks and boulders can be pretty useful if you have a homestead in terms of landscaping and hardscaping. If you want to build a stone wall, if you wanted to build a small retaining wall, if you want to just use them as a point of interest in the garden, they're perfect for that. So for today's project, we're going to bust out the trusty Kubota. We're going to get those rocks from the side of the driveway and we're going to put them in one place. That way they're all consolidated for when we want to use them. And I got to say that some of these rocks are pretty big. I don't know if they're even in line with the Kubota's lifting capacity for the bucket. We're not going to be going too far. We're going to be on flat ground. I'm really just going to be transporting them up and down the driveway. So even if I go a little bit over what I would comfortably want to put in the bucket of this Kubota, we should be safe. That said, if you're doing something like this with your tractor, definitely adhere to the manufacturer's lifting capacities. You don't want to overload your tractor. A tipped over tractor is no joke. It can hurt and even kill you. If you're doing something like this at home, be safe about it. I'm going to try my best too. All right, now that we got the rock in the bucket, let's go put it down where I'm gonna put all these rocks that I collect. So here's a great example of why it would have been a lot nicer to do this earlier in the year. I just heard some thunder kind of out that way behind me. I had wanted to come out earlier in the year and do this, but I just kind of never got around to it. So you can see down behind me, these ferns have grown in all around a bunch of rocks that I pulled. The next rock I'm gonna get though has not grown in, or it has, but it hasn't really affected it much. This thing's pretty big. I'm not quite sure exactly how the Kubota is gonna handle it, but I figure the best way to do it is just to try. So I'll set up the camera and see if we can lift this thing. All right, so as you can see, we're having a hard time with this rock. It's kind of wedged in a weird place. I'm pretty sure if I could get it into the bucket, I think I could curl it back in and it would be fine. But, and I don't know if the camera picked it up, there was just a pretty big crack of thunder fairly nearby. So rather than stand out here amongst all these trees, and obviously right next to a telephone pole that carries our power in, so it's definitely charged, I'm just gonna bug out. I'm gonna head up. I retreated to the screen porch here, and I'm just hanging out with Jackie and Emma. And I'll just come back and continue moving those rocks tomorrow. We'll make it a 2-day into 1 video kind of deal. So we'll see you tomorrow. All right, we're back. Got a few rocks in the bucket already. These are just some rocks I picked out of the yard in the last couple days. We have a couple rocks over here that I've dug out of the driveway over the years. They're not as big as that other one down the driveway that I tried to dig up the other day. I want to have another crack at that one today. If we get it in the bucket, we're definitely going to max out this thing. But I want to give it a shot and see if I can move it. If not, you know, then it's going to stay there because I'm not going to be able to get it moved with this thing. I might have to borrow a neighbor's tractor or something like that. Let's set up on this rock behind me and try to get it up and out. So we got the rock into the bucket. It took a little bit more maneuvering than I expected. It was in the ground a little bit more than I thought. I dumped that thing there, I think, about 2 years ago. So, and I just kind of, the same way you saw me get it out is kind of how I got it in there, except I pushed it in. Most of the time you saw me using the loader to pull that rock out. I had it in the float position. With the bucket curled down that far, you're putting a lot of stress on that leading edge, which in turn, because of leverage, is putting a lot of stress on that center ram there. So you want to have your bucket in float where it's not going to essentially pick up the whole front end of the tractor on just that one ram if you're trying to drag that rock backwards. So that worked out okay. There's one small thing you have to be super careful with on these small tractors though, and that is how much you put in the bucket. I mentioned it in my review video up here that the max limits on these loaders of these small tractors is not necessarily that big. And with something like this rock, you do have to be careful, even though it looks relatively small compared to the size of the bucket. You would think looking at it like, oh, I can fit a bunch of other small rocks in there as well, and I could have maybe kept the ones in that I dumped already, but here's why. I don't have the loader up very high, so this is relatively safe to do, but with just this rock in the bucket, I can step up into here, and that tire's right up off the ground. And that's with me putting all my weight in the center of the bucket, right there. If I come over to the far side of the bucket, I barely have to press. And I can pick that tire right up off the ground. That's why I can't stress enough to everybody, if you have a small tractor like this, you need to have some ballast in the back. We have loaded rear tires and you can still see how easy it is to get this thing up on edge and tippy. I should really have an implement on the back of this. I don't own one. I have a York rake that a neighbor owns that I use when I need it, and I could have gone over and grabbed it, but right now I'm just making sure I'm being extremely comfortable. If I'm carrying a load in the loader and I'm going to be depositing it somewhere, I'm going to have my ROPS up. I'm going to have my seatbelt on. So let's get the rock that's in the bucket over by the pile I was making before. Like I said, I'm going to be very careful. I'm not going to put my tractor loader up basically at all. I'm not going to try to turn the tractor around right now. I'm just going to back up straight where I am because I'm on the driveway, which is relatively flat. When I make the turn from the driveway over to where the rocks are. I'm going to keep the bucket essentially on the ground. That way the tractor has a lower center of gravity and doesn't want to tip over on me. There's a handful of smaller rocks in there as well. You can see behind me right over there where that last rock was. So I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna bring the bucket in, but I'm gonna load those up mostly by hand. I think there's probably every single one in there I can pick up, or at least kind of roll along the ground, so we'll do it that way. I don't know if you caught it on the last two boulders that I was dumping, but we had actually maxed out the bucket on the Kubota right there. In the part of the video where you see me dumping them, you'll see I get to a certain point and I try to lift the bucket higher and it won't go any higher. And that's essentially the relief valve of the tractor saying, nope, there's no more pressure. You've got all the pressure we're gonna give you and we can't lift it. So we're just not gonna lift it. So right there you can see that's the max amount that this bucket would lift to that height, maybe like a foot, foot and a half off the ground, without shimming the hydraulic system in this. We've chosen not to shim this, one, because of the warranty possibility, but two, any more weight in that thing, and this tractor gets super tippy. So without ballast on the back, which we're not always running with, why would I want to lift so much that the tractor gets super tippy on me? That said, we find ourselves in a similar situation to the other day. It's afternoon, I'm gonna probably head inside after this. It's starting to maybe drizzle a little bit. I hear thunder off in the distance, and we're back at that big rock that I dug out earlier. We tried to lift it in the first part of the video. It didn't work. What I think I'm going to do now is maybe try to drag it out into the driveway, and then if I can't get it in the bucket and scoot it up the driveway super slow, I'm gonna try to essentially just push it up the driveway with the bucket, and we'll see how that goes. got it out, guys. I'm gonna try to get under. I'm gonna try and get it in the bucket, and maybe carry it up the driveway. You know, like 4 or 5 inches up off the ground. I don't know if that's even gonna work. It might be too much for the tractor. I mean, this thing is big. It's mostly in the bucket right now. There's that little rock that I put underneath holding it in there. It's kind of holding it rocked back into the bucket. So the next step is going to be I'm going to try to curl the bucket back and see if the boulder will settle in the bucket. If it doesn't curl back, I'm just not even going to try to lift it because it's too heavy. That went better than expected, I guess. I thought it was gonna be a lot more herky-jerky, like it was gonna be the tooth bar was gonna be catching on rocks that were in the driveway and things like that. And there really was enough clearance where, you know, it kind of skidded up the driveway just fine. I don't know if I'd want to do that all the time, mainly because it will tear up the bottom of your bucket. There's no wear edge on the bottom of the bucket. I guess eventually you could weld more steel in there, but it came up the driveway. It did not want to lift it. There was one point when I was coming up out of the driveway and onto this little kind of the side of the driveway where it's raised up, where I had my hand on the loader stick and I was pulling back a little bit to see if I could get it, if the terrain pushed the loader up, if it would assist and hold it there. And it did, but immediately I felt the back end of the tractor getting pretty light, so I put it back down on the ground and just slid it in the rest of the way. There's no reason to kind of be a hero about it. I can't fault this tractor too much. I know a lot of people gripe and say, oh, it's a mini tractor, it's, you know, really small, and it is. It's one of the smallest tractors on the market that you can buy that I would consider not a lawnmower and a real tractor, quote unquote. If a homeowner needed to move those rocks, they're not going to move them with a lawn tractor for sure. Even with a loader bucket on the end of it, you know, your biggest Craftsman or John Deere or Toro or whatever, anything that falls into the lawn tractor category, it's not moving those rocks. Thanks for watching this video, everybody. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below and we'll answer them as quickly as we can. Other than that, thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.